welcome to our extraordinary council meeting to consider a number of items that east of the law and a huge amount of work has gone into Pātukura, our Kirikiri Waitangi. Welcome to all of our money here coming to canvas today. Let's open our council meeting. I'll give our council credit. Anyway, tātou. A tuku mātou kia kaha mai ne māngai ko whiriwhiri kia mo te kaurihero te kūtika i te mahi me te ngā kauaha, te whakamahi e ngā pūrina me te mā tauranga e roto i ngā wānanga me ngā hatapaunga ki te turi ai te tahi hapuri mata tikana, e tū kotahi ana, ka mutu ka whiki ana te wanga o tō tātou rohe, ka katawa no i ngā take o te rohe I runga I te tikumi tikuma. Lord, we ask that through council discussions and decisions, the representatives we have elected may govern the Whanua district with imagination, skill and wisdom to achieve a fairer and more united community that enhances the well-being of our district and solves the district's problems efficiently and effectively. Amen. I just want to ask if there are any apologies or declarations of interest that people would like to make. Sorry.
Apologies from Councillor.
We'll have the I'll second that. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions, that's carried. Just noting that our kaipiti reo currency is able to attend today. Before we get into the deputations, I just wanted to pass on a few mayoral announcements. First up, but we didn't let it stop us yesterday, we won't let it stop us today, but today is Kore Piriki Tangaro, Kore Days, a low community days, but it's good. We'll see how we get on our meeting games. I also wanted to just acknowledge and give a huge congratulations to Peekaboo Backyard Eatery, who at the Hospitality Awards won Best Cafe, won the Sustainability Award, and took out the Supreme Award as well. So congratulations to Peekaboo and the team. We did it there last year for our elected member Christmas party. So I think they hit Peekaboo. Also want to wish a hari hurito to our Te Hono Ho to Lani.
Yes,
21st.
Thank you.
And to give a reminder to all of our whānau that there are plenty of matariki and puanga celebratory events across the whānau. One obviously an import. So for anyone on the live stream wanting to come in and sing some waita with our kaimani, you're more than welcome to 11 o'clock, I think it is. Otherwise, please check out our Facebook page and more events on across the whānau to celebrate our new year. With that, we'll get into our deputations. The first deputation I have Shona Work and Neil Sorensen, who are members of the Kirikiri Golf Club. They have a letter on page 172 of the agenda that they will be speaking to. Shona and Neil, happy to pass the time over to you. If you're happy to sit or you'd like to come up to the lectern, you'd like it. Our governance skills will chime in and give you a 1 minute warning.
Tēnā koutou katoa. No Kirikiri aho, ko Sorensen te whana, ko Neil aho. Kanui te mihi kia koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. The work of the Mayor and Councillors, thank you for the opportunity to speak to the meeting. My name is Neil Sorensen. I've been a member of the Kirikiri Golf Club since 1980 and I am a vice member. We're here today to clarify the Kirikiri Golf Club members' position regarding the proposed development adjacent to the golf course. I'd also like to thank the Whanau District Council personnel we've been in touch with. Alicia Kate, Ty here, and Jay McCallick have been most helpful. Thank you very much. And on behalf of the members of the club, of the Kirikiri Golf Club, I'd like to apologise to the Whanau District Council for any confusion caused by submissions from the club. So a brief summary. In October 2022, the club received a letter from Kiwi Fresh Orange Company giving brief information regarding submission to be sent to the District Council This is now submission 554 to the district plan and request rezoning of 197 hectares of land adjacent to the golf club. And this proposed subdivision that will eventually go there is scenario F on the draft paper plan. 4 days after we received the letter, the golf club notified Kerry Fresh that while the club was neutral in regard to the subdivision, we strongly objected to any road through the golf course and requested that the roading options be removed from the submission. However, that did not happen, and so many roading options still remain in the submission as it stands at the moment. This club's position was also notified to the Far North District Council in submission 297 to the district plan. The club members have received no further information regarding the proposal, so it was a big surprise to hear that the golf club supports scenario F, stated by a Far North District Council representative at one of the draft spatial plan meetings. We then found that in November 2024, the board chair of the Kerikeri Golf Club had made a submission to the draft spatial plan, which said on behalf of the committee, they supported scenario F and acknowledged that there was the likelihood of roading and new golf holes being built. Not all members of the board, and apparently none of the general membership, were aware of this submission. An extraordinary general meeting was called, at which 100 members attended, and this information was given out, and the members considered it and passed some motions. So from that meeting, the current position of the club membership is, at the present time, the club does not support the proposals in submission 554 or scenario F, is opposed to those proposals which affect the club, and very strongly objects to any proposal concerning a public road through the course. The results of these deliberations were conveyed in a letter to both the developer and the Far North District Council on the 5th June this year. I would now like to introduce Shona Work, who's going to, who's a very valued member of the course, of the club. She's done an awful lot of work on the course, and she's going to elaborate a little bit more on the feelings of the members. Thank you. Thank you.
Morena, Mayor and Councillors. I've been a member of the Kerikeri Golf Club since 2001, and apart from that, I've also played at Waitangi for 5 years. Presently, I'm the coordinator for the club's Northern Regional Council Bio Fund program. We've been operating this fund for 19 months, and myself and 6 volunteers have been trapping and poisoning the animal pests, namely the rats and possums, and removing the plant pests from the golf course. To date, we've trapped 455 possums. This has resulted in a huge increase in the birds, including the tui, fantail, kingfisher, and the native pigeons or kuru coming back to the golf course. Recently, we've also had a lot of excitement as we've had a kiwi on it, and I've personally seen it twice myself.
1 minute remaining.
Our golf course was virtually given to us 52 years ago, and we've planted hundreds of trees on the property. We have benefited the community by having lots of hosting tournaments, bringing people from Northland all over the country, and we host many private clubs, and we have motorhomes staying there with all sorts of different people. The proposed course changes would actually make it more difficult for people to play, especially if we have a lot of elderly players, and it becomes more expensive, it becomes a cart course, and we'd have a lot of traffic noise, we'd lose the bird song, and we would have problem, and we'd lose a lot of native trees and time. And as just to let you know that we would prefer that we became a sanctuary course with a buffer between us and the people next door. Thank you.
Tēnā koe. Thank you very much to Neil and to Shona for your deputation to us. Our next deputation, I have our Hapu Roku. And Rio, you're up or is up?
Yeah, it's going to come off.
Mihi nui ana kia whenau mai haere mai.
Tēnā wā, tēnā mihi tutahi kia koe, pētene, te hea mana mō o te kai, i te kai hana, tatua. Maro, today I'm one of several of the tribes that make up Katukulia today. My role has been to be a shoulder for our group, so I care. So I'm just here to introduce to you our group. It's been a long journey for us. It's been extremely fun. I'd like to thank Roger and the rest of the team for this. So I'd like to put three speakers up. So,
Kei community winga, Piri Mana, Waitangi Te Awa, Whiwharangi Te Moana. So thank you today, and collective members for your respected areas of council. Just in regards to the Pātukurea, this has been 3 years in the and we've come to this conclusion around to adopt this plan. We had a scenario that was a bit far out and too costly, which was the far west of Waipapa, but it is a Waipapa spatial Kerikeri plan, so we supported the hybrid in regards to the E&E, RC. I know we heard the concerns of the golf course, which we supported was a no-go zone due to the environmental effects and flooding zones, but that's another story. But if you've already had your information in regards to the cons and pros and the cost, just in regards to the infrastructure and the feasibility advantages and disadvantages, we looked at over the 3 years, not just the environmental, cultural, but the community impact and the developments that would benefit this plan in regards to the 30-year plan. Just to let you know, our collective group has moved forward in regards to a IOMI collective claims group, direct negotiations with the treaty settlements and the commercial redress. That's nothing new, but it's new to use, I suppose. So we're trying to get ourselves organised for the financial investments that are happening, hopefully sooner than later. Just in regards to the clear evidence-based blueprint that they had put out, that was good for us, for new learning and to understand the reflections and the community and cultural aspirations. And hopefully that aligns with the best practice or planning principles that have been in the documents that we've shared with you on the workshops. In regards to the contingent future and growth areas, there's clear support from our cultural alignment in regards to this adoption of special planning.
Questions? Kia ora kau, nānei kia koutou I haere mai tēnei rā. Nata ko John Tiatone. In your submission, and I've been thinking about this myself, is you suggested that that there should be some sort of like korowai overlay of the proposed treaty settlement Māori claims. With all the overlays, and I respect all the kōrero going on, that's, yeah.
That's at the forefront of our roku and our office and our claims groups. There's a bespoke process, a customary process with the new Te Ara Whiti group.
What, sorry?
Te Ara Whiti group has changed.
Nice.
Te tari whakatau.
Yeah, Te Tari Whakatau.
Yeah.
So we're engaged in their new process. That is public-private process. And in regards to overlapping interests or issues, that's a long process.
Kia ora, tēnā koe.
Any other part? We have another council member.
Yeah.
Please speak to
Hello, thank you. I'm not in a tato. I'm not going to take too long. I think because a lot of the groundwork's all there, and this morning, as I understand it, elected members have the recommendation, I think, from staff in front of you. And I think from Ngāti Rehi's perspective, we're going to trust the process in terms of whether we agree with some of that or not. There is a provision in there, I see in option B, to perhaps also allow for provisions for scenario F to at some point maybe be re-looked at. And that's fine by me, but from Ngāti Rehi perspective, we support the coming here. These fellas have a job to do, and we respect that decision at the end of the day. The relationship for Ngāti Rehi and Moko, Kelly, is very, very much in our covenant for Ngāti Rehi. So I'm not going to comment really on any of the treaty claiming that not even the corridor that we've had. It's not dating because there's a whole different political.
I am going to go there. I think there's some desire to, honour all the submissions that have come back from, through the consultation by having a contingent future growth area, which is scenario F, included in the plan today. Subject, of course, to developer-led infrastructure and collaboration or support from the golf course, because this is a plan for a very long time.
Yes, yeah.
We don't know what's going to happen in 10, 20, 30 years. What do you say to that?
Obviously we support the option F, and mainly because we think that the most likely, the most benefit for our Hapu community in terms of employment and job opportunities, housing. I've read all the reports. I see there's astronomical costings alongside of it. It's all trying to remind me. How do we pay for that kind of thing? Well, those are good questions, but ultimately that sits with the governance, as you know this. But there's some practical kind of, if you look at it in different ways, the 197 hectares, that's one big piece of block that seems to simplify the issue around ownership and housing and having to deal with the multiple owners. So I didn't kind of agree with some of the comments in the reports. However, that's that, because it just seemed like a practical kind of approach. But I get it, there's astronomical costing across the whole board. Even if you look at the recommended option A, and your funding that you've set aside, I think $1 million or something like that, for wastewater, it's not enough. Anyway, so you're already sure. I'll leave that with you. Any other part-time?
Enough with you.
Good.
All I want to say is that yes, it is a long process. I know that we've come so far in it that the develops the D&E has already been set in place. I think what I'd like to say is though that it's really important for our Hapu collective to be engaged in these developments that are coming to our community. We can't stop growth. I know, the Golf Course talks about, wanting to keep their sanctuary, their beautiful paradise, but unfortunately I wish I could say that out at Rangatani. We've got houses building all around us. We can't stop growth. we have to move forward. We know that in 20 years' time, I would believe that Waipapa will become our main city structure, and that Kerry can have their lovely cafe hub that they want to keep. I think building on top around our community in the Kerry hub is, you're just squashing them all in, and we can't facilitate for them at this time. I believe when it comes to the wastewater and our stormwater and everything that's building around it in our little hub, Waipapa has the space for us to grow further in that development area. And when we talk about affordability housing, you know, I've just cleared my land down at Whārea Road. I can't even afford the housing that's been put on the table, you know. So I believe that the affordability, when it comes to the scenario F of our housing, is more cheaper than me trying to support the D&E, which I've explained before. So I think moving forward, it's important for us to still table it when it comes to our scenario F, and let's see what the district zoning brings us to the table. And if it does, I don't want it to be a consideration. If it moves forward, our Hapu Collective would like to be engaged in part of that, and to make sure that, especially around our whenua and our water, we're always protecting it. I think what I find hard is that when council come back to us and tell us about the issues of the stormwater and the wastewater and everything, it's not the community's problem, it's the council's problem, because you haven't addressed the red flags that are out in our community now. You know, we need to address it and stop making all these developments around us that we have no control of, but then we still hear the wastewater and the stormwater happening in our community. They're not sorted. We still have big issues that are going on in here, and the council need to be accountable for those before they start setting off more developments in our community. Kia ora.
Thank you all for
Just a question. Two of you have spoken about option B as being, which that option B says adopt a spatial plan in accordance with option A plus a further amendment that directs the additional monitoring and reviews of the spatial plan, enabling the review of greenfield areas, including previously considered growth scenario as part of the development. And that refers specifically to option F. Is that what you're suggesting? Support? Option then is it's on page 9 of the document.
Page 9.
I've only had nothing to pull up.
I thought that was what I meant.
There was a late night email from Hello, so and I suggested the same.
Oh, yeah. I see what you mentioned. It's under the disadvantages. Wasn't the advantages, as I said earlier.
Thank you very much to everyone for these deputations. We are going to go to item 5.1 now, the adoption of their dedicated Waipapa spatial plan. Before we move the item, because I do have an alternate resolution, was in the middle that Councillor McNally and Stratford considering putting up. I do want to give time over to our GM Training Policy, Roger Eckers, who has requested to give us a
Just quickly.
recap briefing update before we actually do. Also, after Roger speaks, I will open up for questions so that we don't have to abide by standing orders, ordering and time limits and number of questions, because I want to get this right, because this is so big for dedicated Waipapa and all. We'll pass over to Roger.
Ngā katoa ko whangarai ki whenua tupu ko Waipapa te kainga. E kau whakahaere e mātu whakamahere, e kau whakahaere e monihera o te hiku o te ka. Roger Eckers tōkoe ingo. Tēnā tātou katoa. So, yeah, it's pretty bad. So my name's Roger Eckes. I grew up in Whangarei and I live in Waipapa. Got a couple of daughters in their 20s. They grew up in Kirikiri and Waipapa. So there is an attachment to this project today because it says consequences going forward. So it's a significant milestone to put together a spatial plan for Kirikiri Waipapa. It represents a combination of 4 years of dedication, collaboration, community engagement. It's a result of countless workshops, events, report studies, and tireless efforts of many passionate individuals. I've got people to stop over there as before I go any further, I want to take a moment just to sincerely thank everyone who's contributed to this. This has truly been a cross-council collaborative effort, so I appreciate the support we've had internally to get this across the line. And I guess today, you know, whatever happens today, this will be recorded and go down as a public record about our decision that's made today. So I want to give special thanks to the Integrated Planning Department and the Growth Planning team, Tammy, Jay, Asban, Sid, and more recently Emma and Giles, who've come on board with the team and Robin as well. And the external experts who support us along the way. There's been a huge commitment to get us to this point. So Te Patu Kurea is grounded in the principles that emerge from early engagement of planning for high growth, protecting valuable horticultural land, supporting intensification to make the most of existing infrastructure. Establish a unique identity for Kirikiri and Waipapa. From these principles, we develop clear objectives: resilient infrastructure, diverse and affordable housing, safe, connected transport networks, protection and enhancement of our natural environment, culture and heritage. We believe the draft spatial plan for you today reflects these best practice, government direction, robust evidence, including housing and business analysis, and extensive community input. In 2024, Council approved consultation on 6 scenarios, including Scenario F. Following public engagement and further analysis, Scenario has been reassessed. While it is considered thoroughly, it does not align with the principles and objectives of the plan in summary. 1, it lacks the evidence that it will deliver affordable, diverse housing for future residents. Proposes development and land classified for horticulture, which contradicts national direction and local properties. Relies on infrastructure in a flood-prone area, raising long-term costs and risks. It poses environmental and cultural risks to significant heritage sites downstream. It increases vehicle use and emissions, undermining any carbon neutral goals we might have. It imposes high costs on ratepayers and future homeowners with limited affordability outcomes. Choosing any option other than the staff recommendation introduces significant risk and long-term consequences for Kirikiri and Waipapa now and for generations to come. Ultimately, the decision is for you today. I do acknowledge that you faced a fair bit of lobbying and pressure, but today I do encourage you to focus on the evidence, vision, and the legacy we leave behind. Take any questions?
Thank you for that, Roger. What I might do is, if you want to, I think that we will have questions in general, but I do want to raise and please put up on the screen the Scenario F inclusion resolution.
Cool, but I've got a question about the so council's commitment from the spatial plan to the next step for implementation of infrastructure. How confident are you that future council will be able to prioritise this? That some of it will be compliance requirements, but a lot of it is growth infrastructure. How confident are you that those will be able to be prioritised alongside the rest of the district's infrastructure requirements, especially around wastewater?
Yeah, I guess, as I said, the point of doing this is to ensure it does get prioritised. So you've got a plan that you can come back to. To date, we haven't had those plans in place. So this is directing growth, and where it directs growth, it directs infrastructure. So it goes hand in hand. So I'm hoping that future councils will pick this up and look at it and go, we've got clear evidence of where we need to be pushing growth to, and that's clear evidence of where we need to be putting infrastructure in, roads, waters, social infrastructure. So I can't guarantee anything beyond for a new council, but I hope that with an adoption of a plan like this today, that is the basis and the starting point to allow that informed decision making potential. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Roger, I just want to say, and personally, I'm neither here nor there. Honestly, yet. You can all lobby me in your strong arguments for and against. But I just want to say, I echo the sentiment shared to you and the staff that have taken up this huge amount of work, our Hapu Rōpū working group, and members of the community. I think our Kirikiri still has an acting chair because of the collateral damage of the spatial plan, which saw the former chair stand down. So this has been a huge journey for the entire community, for all of the different stakeholders and the leaders throughout it, and also for our staff. Whatever way we do go, however, staff, that doesn't reflect on how we view you or your roles. And the reason why I say that is I heard just then what you shared, Roger, is that if we were to choose anything other than the staff recommendation, then we will be potentially making the wrong decision. Now, this council that I've sat on this term and the previous term have followed staff recommendations, and it's been the wrong decision. We've decided not to follow staff recommendations, and it's been the right decision, and vice versa. But I don't want today's decision to be reflective in any way how we view the incredible amount of work, like I said with my book stopper, but it is a decision that we make in these roles, and we're elected to make these decisions. With that, I would like to share the resolution I read this morning. I want to go over it, and then I just want to tease it before we move any. I just want to tease questions out of it so that people feel comfortable if the good. So I've got this here. I also just want to understand how this would correspond to, because this is an and from what I read, except for would have to take out the option F section of the deliberation report. Because I think we still need to follow all of these staff recommendations in this deliberation report. Maybe related to here. So Councillor McNally and Commissioner Shepard recommending that we adopt the Te Pātukuri Kirikiri Waikato Spatial Plan based on a hybrid growth scenario, combining elements of scenarios D&E set out in our draft plan consulted on. Notes that submissions we received with support of an alternative growth scenario F, expansion, which proposes greenfield development in the northwest of Kirikiri, including flood mitigation and developer-funded infrastructure provision. 3, agrees to include scenario F in the spatial plan as a contingent future growth area to reflect the submission and acknowledge its potential subject to the following conditions. That the proposal is progressed through appropriate statutory processes, e.g. rezoning via the district plan. That comprehensive flood mitigation infrastructure is designed and funded by the developer. That necessary infrastructure is provided at no cost to council. That engagement with mana whenua demonstrates clear support and cultural alignment. That any future inclusion is consistent with regional spatial planning and community aspirations. And then I've got an extra one added there, that any future inclusion is done with the support of the golf club. D, instructs staff to include a section in the adopted spatial plan explaining the status of the Kirikiri North proposal scenario F as a conditional developer-led future growth area, and to illustrate this on the spatial plan map using a dashed boundary or similar notation. E, notes that the inclusion of scenario F in this way does not change the adopted growth scenario or the infrastructure planning basis of the spatial plan at this time, and any formal incorporation of this area will be subject to further consultation and or planning required. And then we've got some notes on our one and supporting references. Someone's done their homework. So with that, I just want to allow questions from elected members before I would allow Councillor McNally and the Minister to move this as an alternate resolution. I just did have a question around, and this is for staff, that if we were to consider this, does this preclude all of these recommendations that you've given in the deliberations report, that if I was to have moved the recommendation as set out in our printed agenda, that tells us let's adopt option A, which includes all of these in this. So we'd need to have something in this alternate to capture all of the spelling things you've got. There's some great acknowledgements of submissions and recommendations across all.
Include as an override. As an override, what the recommendation is. This.
Oh, I'm asking if there's something extra required here to make sure that we capture everything in here that I read.
Yep.
But except this alternate does not accept the recommendations that you've made in regards to option F submissions. The option F submission in our deliberations report, the recommendation from staff is that we recommend that scenario F continues to be excluded for long-term growth within Te Pātū. So we can't have that. That's a double negative to the one.
I guess the deliberations report is something, but the real thing is the resolution. So whatever goes into the resolution counts. So the only, by adopting the spatial plan, you're effectively adopting the principles and the objectives as well. So the question would be, for me, would be if we are going to add in scenario F to include it as a contingent growth area, what does it actually mean or signal? Is it contradictory to the spatial plan principles and objectives? And more importantly, what does that mean for the district plan area process? So I will ask Tammy to talk to that. It's been the manager of the plan.
Thank you.
Or is that?
Thank you, Tammy.
Tammy, go on.
Morning, everyone. In relation to the alternative resolution that's been raised, I suppose a question that's popping into my mind, perhaps more clarification, is the intent to have the hearing panel make the decision on option N? Is it to just highlight that if rezoning down the track is achieved, that is an outcome that needs to be good as well? I'm a little bit confused by the resolution. I think I could confusion hearing panel as well.
Question then, because I thought that this is like horse and cart or whatever, so whatever we decide in the spatial plan is going to signal to the hearings commissioners where this council is at, even though they are going to be hearing from, having hearings and then putting forward their recommendations for what the zoning should be for this area. So if we were to, as per this, because otherwise this is the signal I'm saying, I would, if we were to adopt this as you've pointed out, then we are telling our hearings commissioners that we recommend that scenario F continues to be excluded, so don't rezone.
I meant in terms of the alternative.
Well, I know, but so what I can see this resolution is trying to, recommendation is trying to achieve is to say, we're not, we're agnostic to F. We're for F if all of these other, if all of the risks and concerns are met, then actually F becomes a viable solution. We're not saying it's go F straight away. We're saying if a developer can meet all of these conditions, actually F becomes a viable growth area, but we're going to tag it in our spatial plan for the time being as being one to watch or something like that.
Yeah, I suppose it's just clarity for any user of the spatial plan as to what direction spatial plan is giving. I understand what you're saying. You want to make the decision today and have the spatial plan lead and direct other documents. It's just when how you write the spatial plan and any resolution, just give greater clarity and certainty to those end users to intent of any decision made today. And I suppose I'm just highlighting is that perhaps some refinement of the wording would need to be looked at if this is where you would like to go today, just to give that clear direction to the end users that if the intent is to say we're not directing efforts, be very clear as to what the caveats are and the outcomes that have to be achieved, because otherwise others who are making decisions might not understand what we were wanting to achieve today.
Thank you for that. We'll go to Councillor Foy.
Is it okay if I ask Ms. Wooster to stand as a so that everyone can see?
If she says you the thing.
We'll stand next to each other.
So on page 144 of the document, there's the analysis of the evaluation of the different scenarios, which I found really helpful. My question about the draft resolution, well, I have a number of questions. But I think standing orders have been suspended to allow us to. So the tabled resolution essentially sets out conditions. I'm unsure if the landowner for scenario F has offered these. But these have not been offered by the landowner.
And the submission that has been made to the district plan about so yes, at this point in time, we do not know the position of the landowner.
So that's a concern for me because there are two different types of processes. So in a resource consent, you can condition things or the applicant can offer it as part of the scope of their proposal. For this rezoning, it's not a plan change, it's not led by the developer, it's council deciding. So unless they offer it, my concern is that council are going to end up being the ones at the end of the day paying. So scenario F on page 144 outlines significant new infrastructure with words here, it says limited benefits. I can see the benefit of linking Waipapa with Kirikiri with this land parcel in the middle. However, my concern in the implementation plan, which we haven't actually got to next, is who's going to pay for all this infrastructure? Because what we've seen in Kaipara is their council cripple under the cost of paying for the significant new infrastructure for Mangawhai. Not just Mangawhai paying, I'm talking about their whole district paying. And I know this is about Kirikiri, but at the end of the day, when we commit to a plan, that to me is a promise that we're going to implement this. And we're not talking about who's paying or how we're going to pay for it, but over $200 million is a lot of money. And we haven't actually had that discussion. I have asked a number of questions about rating. I have asked a number of questions about the connections policy and how this will be implemented and who and how will be paid for. And I was told we have to wait, whether we make a plan and then we wait, we decide how it's going to be paid for. So the scope of this here is a concern for me when the developer gets an offer that they've paid. And that's a concern for me that's getting up on ratepayer pay. So maybe there'll be some more discussion around this that will address those concerns. Does the staff have any response about that?
Yes, when we looked at the spatial plan, we have taken a conservative position when we've looked at options on the premise that ratepayers will be funding a large portion of this. Obviously, that could change down the track because you might have a developer who comes along and is willing to enter into an agreement that says we'll bear these costs in addition to what we would do normally as part of the resource consent. But we have taken a conservative position where we've looked at council because as has been pointed out, once council writes a document that signals where we support growth, then the community and developers have expectations that we will work with them to achieve those outcomes. What that ends up being, we can't say today in the room, 100%, and I totally agree. You don't know what could be offered down the track. But at this point in time, have to be mindful that we don't know that question. So when weighing up options, we have looked at, you know, which options require the lesser amount of investment in terms of infrastructure.
Still makes the growth projections we're trying to. So the 4,600 additional houses is about where it's cost effective place we believe that should go.
And we think that if people wish to look at alternative options, because obviously it's only our option that we've put forward as staff, but ultimately the decision sits with those in the room today as the decision makers. Option B does provide for that ability to revisit as new information or developers come to us and say, we're happy to enter into these agreements and bear these costs.
That's option B in the printed
It
agenda.
provides that flexibility to adapt, and it also gives certainty that within a 2-year period or upon adoption of the operative plan, proposed district plan becomes implemented, that we will go out and re-look at things. So it's giving certainty to the community that we won't just park the document, we will go back, we will re-look. And if things have changed and through, for example, the proposed district plan process, the developer says, we are willing to pay for everything, then that new information will be able to be used to relook at our greenfield areas.
What is the, sorry, I'll wait, I've got council research next. Oh, sorry, no, Karen.
The other question I had was about hazards and the Northern Regional Council. Because that's been brought up through the process, and we know that Waipapa has significant flood hazard risk, as does the subject site for Scenario E. How up to date is the current flood modelling that NRC has done, and has new flood modelling been presented that reflects a more accurate or more defined area of use of the site? Because we know, for example, Kaitaia is in a flood zone. There's still houses there. And so that was another question I had about the flood mitigation that NRC may or may not do in Waipapa in their long-term plan, and if they're going to fund that, NRC.
Yeah. So we're actually next week having hearings for natural hazards for the proposed district plan, in addition to the spatial plan today. So both teams have been talking to the regional council officers, and the advice that we've been given is that yes, at the moment there is flyover has occurred in terms of collecting new LiDAR data. However, due to the fact that there's been minimal changes to the areas and questions that we're looking at, they have recommended to us to proceed, as they anticipate very minimal changes as a result of that additional LiDAR coming in. One of the other reasons the plan, either if you adopted as per the staff recommendation or say option B, the implementation plan clearly says there should be reviews. So we don't know at the moment what Northern Regional Council is going to do long term in terms of managing the flooding that might happen. There's a lot of debate happening as to how it should be managed. Multiple options have been considered over the years and have been looked at right now. From what I understand, there's talk of a dam, there's talk of what could Kiwi Fresh Orange Land do as well. So we have provided for scope in this document to enable us, if an active flood mitigation project was undertaken by NRC, say in 5 years' time, that we would adapt to that, and we would be able to relook at our greenfield areas. For example, we've taken a conservative approach and said, look, new housing shouldn't be put where there's a flooding risk. When you have an alternative where you can develop without a flooding risk, we've promoted that alternative location. But if there was some significant flood mitigation put in, the plan allows you to adapt to that if that's what you wish to do. If you wish to say, it would make more sense now, 10 years down the track, that houses are built here instead. We have that ability under the spatial plan to adapt.
So parts of option F are not flood prone.
Sometimes.
That is correct. I think it's, I want to say 45% of the property is identified as flood prone.
How much, sorry?
45%. Correct, Jay?
Councillor.
And the last question is about staging.
Yes, that's correct.
So the other councillors, if someone puts in a subdivision, they can put like the easy stuff in and then not even do the last stage, for example. They could just do stage 1 and then just forget about the other stages if they want to. And it sounds like a good story, the whole story, but actually they're just going to do the first one because they can choose not to do the last stages. So in terms of the staging for implementation for these scenarios in the context of infrastructure, why have you put for this scenario this as the preferred scenario in your report, based on that staging of the implementation of infrastructure? Because could you add on to the existing infrastructure that's there, or is it that it's less risk for infrastructure? Basically, my question is around if the onus was put on us to provide this infrastructure, could the staging be enabled to be realistic, or would it be a big risk for cost up front?
So the focus of the staging is it's infill question because of the existing infrastructure being able to provide for some of that growth already without further investment. Also because of it being more affordable to do some upgrades to your existing infrastructure where you've already got all the services, you like your wastewater, your stormwater. One of the added benefits is by taking that as our first staged approach as well. We do have submissions in the proposed district plan that would enable us to give effect to that as well, medium density housing. So we get some immediate changes that would help people wanting to get more affordable housing and
John 53.
more developed. And then we identify, as you say, the next area that we would go to. But what we have is just taken an approach where it would be a slow approach, looking at where infrastructure already is, and as we can fund, we would roll out to the other areas. Now, the plan through the implementation plan allows us through our funding strategy to adapt, because we're very mindful that there's some big funding decisions will need to be made, and plus, until we know, for example, how our development contributions policy is going to work, whether the council will want to take the position, if we're going to activate greenfield areas, we want that to be 100% developer funded. Those are all decisions that can be made, and then the plan can change even the staging in any way to manage the financial risk to council.
And just for the other council, it's on page 153. Thank you.
That concludes your questions for now. If another one comes up, then if we would take more, I will be willing to do with the decision we make today. I'm going to Councillor Vucic.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have some concerns again. First of all, thank you, for all the work that's been done, especially for the people in Kirikiri and what happened at Puruluri and the Hapu course involved before all this in together, which is great. But my concerns are we've done something similar in the past. It hasn't really been effective. And history shows that developers go where they want to go or where they think is best, where they've got a bit of land, and seem to lack the teeth to direct the development. So I have a question there. Moving going forward, can we prevent that happening? Because we see industrials areas built in rural production zones and likewise housing. So the first question is, what we're planning here, is it going to be able to focus and restrict developers, or do they have freedom to do those things still?
Yes, this will be council's direction to others who are writing other documents or making decisions on those documents.
Okay.
It is basically the blueprint. So, for example, if I'm sitting as a council officer writing a change, I would be looking at this document and saying, where is council signalling we should be looking at new business land? Where should we be doing new other development? So council officers and council making decisions should be using this as the guiding principle. Equally, when resource consents come in, the resource consents team will be able to say, well, this is not aligning with the growth direction of where we're going. The added bonus we have is because we've worked really hard to tie in this decision happening before the proposed district plan hearings that make decisions on your urban framework, on your rezonings that are going to happen in the Kerikeri area, is that immediately a hearing panel is going to look at this document and say, well, where is the council saying to us they want to see growth happen? Where do they want to see land activated? So this will have weight, and it will direct and enable us to push back on development that's not appropriate for our community.
Of course, the developers open to put through, they can propose a plan change, but they'll develop.
A developer can always,
Challenge.
we can either say no, but what we can say is, here's where we would prefer, here's what we are signaling. But people have always got the option of, even if you had a plan change and the plan change came back as a no, you can take it to court, right? So there's like all the appeal options for Africa, but this is setting up our blueprint.
It's our blueprint, and it gives us the ability through our processes we control to say yes or no. And then ultimately, if someone disagreed, then they'd need to argue through the environment, for example, as to why this document shouldn't be directing these decisions.
So the next question. So thank you, Tammy. So it's really giving a direction where to go, but whether it's legal and the court when it's challenged.
Well, it's the district plan.
Hearing panel.
So anyway, but so just going on, because the second concern I have is this is a 30-year plan. I can probably put money on this one that what we're planning now won't be what's happening in 30 years' time. So what I'd love to see, anything we're doing now, and we need a direction, we need a plan, but what we need is about having the flexibility to actually change and move as circumstances change. We are going to undergo a lot of, for example, it could be like a water well could have a significant change on things, and which can have a positive, maybe even a negative impact on the overall cost, and likewise financial conditions and so on. So you know all of that. So next question is how flexible is this plan? Because you talked about, option B. It's a pity that we've got, scenarios A, B, C, D, and E. Just so no one's confused out here. So I'm talking about the other option to vote on, option B, which seems to actually allow for flexibility. And then I look at the scenario that was being put up as a draft resolution by the Premier, and I'm sure you'll speak to it, and that's Councillor McNally. And that seems to be the gist of what I see being said in there is it's actually saying, let's create flexibility in the plan. And you all know my view. I'd love to see an ongoing consultation of these places, like every LTP. So the question is, at every LTP, how much flexibility have we got to change this? Option B, insist on an earlier scenario to look at change. How flexible is it as in option A? And does this give us more flexibility, or is option B likewise giving us more flexibility?
Yeah.
So in the implementation plan, one of the first things that's done post adoption is settlement monitoring and evaluation framework. So that would be something we'd probably want to do with council as well, and potentially something we could drop in there about doing regular reviews, triggers for reviews, because it can be things that might be changing up there that warrant warrant a review plan. So it is a living document. It's not something that's static, and you'll be 100% correct. And you're right, here in 30 years, we'll probably go and back and say we were right, that wasn't correct. But the point is,
there are significant financial incentives from central government for Greenfield.
Yep. Correct.
I think that would be a trigger for me to want to unlock F, knowing that.
Yep.
Not our money.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, so it'd be things like that whether we build into that framework. So if something came along that government's going to pay for all of infrastructure, then we'd definitely want to.
So, right, because I don't want the plan to sit on the shelf, because very quickly it's going to age, unfortunately. I don't want it to sit on the shelf, but I want it to be dynamic enough, recognised in its implementation, that it's flexible, But at the same time, it has to have some teeth so we can direct where it's going to go. We do have a third question, and this relates to the risk we've got here. Tammy, you did mention, and there's no slide of there, that LiDAR said there's no difference. Well, actually there is. There's a significant difference, and Joe Carr raised that in his report. And he's a long-time councillor in NRC, and NRC's raised flood issues. From the 1980 flood, where it was huge, basically flooding and a loss of life as well. But that I want confidence that I think we're 300 various places, 300 millimetres in a really high intensity in a relatively short period. Based on that, even our other scenarios that we're even favouring, such as D&E, how much percent of that land is actually in a flood area there when a flood event like this? And they do occur in the past. There's plenty of evidence of them occurring frequently over history. So how much percent is that going to be in the flood? Because it appears to me, no matter what we're looking at, we are going to have to look at it. That is a floodplain. That's our Hawke's Bay. Yep. We're looking at doing something in there that provides a detention dam, which can then significantly change the scenarios. You can see how it all connects. The question is I know this Portsfield, for example, was underwater, and significantly underwater in local time. So is anything free? Because maybe Territory itself, but is anything free related to options? And that's still the issue.
Earlier, we did an assessment of areas that are no-go areas and go-slow areas. And we have areas in the that are free from constraints. So yes, there is. And correct or wrong, but the areas we're promoting growth are free from those constraints, from flooding constraints.
Slightly a little bit nuance in that. So Kerikeri not been identified any of the areas that we're talking about infill and greenfield development as having a flood risk because it's at that area as you're going out of town, the Highway 10, rather than going down to the basin area. In terms of Waikato, the new areas for housing, we have identified around Bay Sport, so that is out of any identified risk. But we are also promoting, obviously, ability to infill where there's already existing industrial and commercial land where we've had historical decisions already made. So yes, they are in an overland, a flood area, those areas. But in terms of our new industrial land, that was put at the northern end of Waikato out of the flood area. So where it's new areas to zone for the first time from, rural zoning, we're taking the approach of putting it outside of any flood risk. But where it exists already, it is, as you say, floodplain.
So those are my three questions at the moment. I'll leave it at that so others can speak, but at the moment, paper is probably nothing fairly. And then there's the question is put up, and you can see it is stating it's been flexible with that one.
I'm going to go to Councillor Hauke. How do we do then, Councillor Paul?
I don't want to ask a question, thank you.
Councillor Paul.
Yeah, before I begin, can I please acknowledge that Mr. Hawkins is in the room? Mr. Hawkins is the independent chair that's been appointed to help us with the local water decision that we have to bring back to council by 3. I really enjoy this debate.
Brings back happy memories with me. Same arguments, the same issues.
My question is in relation to the work that we're doing on local done well and any potential impact that the ultimate resolution may have on our direction of travel. At the moment, it's still fluid, so please take these figures slightly with a grain of salt. Our 10-year AMP is telling us that we have $480 million worth of infrastructure spend in the Three Waters space. Our 30-year AMP is bringing us closer to $1 billion, right, just shy of that. And Mr. Billington has been doing some work on refining what those numbers look like, as Mr. Hensley, and we'll be having a
a meeting later today about that. I'm concerned about, and this is my question, is, and it might be Mr. Billington, it might be our planning staff who can answer that, is what is the risk to council if we incorporate scenario F? And any liability that may sit with the ratepayer, regardless of the fine words that have been crafted here, and the good words. But is that enough to protect the future ratepayer from an additional cost? Bearing in mind, there is no such thing as a free lunch. Your worship, there is no such thing as a free lunch, because once you put that infrastructure in, the government tap turns off, and we need to maintain it and depreciate it and operate it. And we have a fiscal 5%. That's where the Department of Internal Affairs has said affordability. We're already well over affordability limit. So I'm just trying to understand what is the risk. And we're only talking about water at this point. There's also significant costs in road upgrades that hadn't been touched on in the alternate resolution. And I read last night at the Windward Rail Association meeting in Whangarei that the National Road Transport Fund showing a $6 billion deficit at 2027. So if we're sitting here thinking we're going to be able to go to the Crown for funds, we're very disappointed. So I do have a question for all of that. I'm not trying to debate a paper yet, but I'm trying to understand what is the risk to council and ratepayers if we include the signal that we wish to include scenario. You might not be able to up to that. Billington.
Through you, Mayor Morcourt. Thank you, Councillor Court, for raising that. As you've indicated, we are working through the process of local water done well at the moment and the financial requirements particularly associated with that. What elected members should be considering is the potential risk with the resolution that's coming up for scenario F. With the local waters done well work at the moment, a bit of a summary, a financial summary is that FNDC has a conservative balance sheet from a debt point of view currently, and it's quite fortunate to be in that position. However, we do recognise, particularly over 10 years, we are working quite hard with the other district councils, with DIA, with the engineers and NIF to understand exactly what the investment program looks like over 10 years to get a balanced view of affordability and the investment requirement far north. Growth scenarios are part of the investment hierarchy that we are considering in that time frame, and making really judicious investment decisions is going to be quite key in terms of how that's delivered over the 10-year period, but also over that 30-year investment time frame. With the scenarios that are tabled, we have done some work with the planning team to understand rates implications. We know that there is a finite population base based on the way council currently rates to support that growth, and council has expressed an appetite to explore development contributions, which will be key in terms of spreading those costs to the beneficiaries of the infrastructure investment. If we're looking at a developer funded type scenario F, we would need to be very clear as to where those financial risks lie and be very, very confident that council has everything buttoned down so that those risks wouldn't be, those financial liabilities, or what the implications would be if they were to transfer to council, and what the implementation of that scenario would look like from an infrastructure funding point of view. We haven't done that exercise at this point, and given the numbers, the quantum of the numbers, the size of the potential area, they're very, very large numbers. And in a worst case scenario, if that were to go through any particular legal processes that we haven't explored at this point, and that liability were found to sit with council, it might not be within the means of this council to fund that. So we need to...
Excuse me.
really understand what that looks like. We don't currently, as I understand, have developer agreements in place.
So development contributions paper is due in July to council and consultation on this.
So in terms of the resolution that's proposed, we would need to work through that in detail, really understand where those risks lie for council, because there are very large numbers and council has a significant investment program that we're working through currently under Local Water Done Well, which will stretch council's balance sheet or the regional CCO entity's balance sheet to substantiate some of the other compliance, health and safety and resilience sort of investments which are also required. So long and short of that one, I guess, we need to really understand what we're getting into before we commit to it.
Any other questions? Deputy Minister Stratford and then Councillor Research.
Thank you. Just coming back to the, so option B in the recommendations versus F, the biggest difference is that B proposes a review in 2 years' time and F proposes to put it in as a contingent
Future growth area.
future growth area. Do you recall how hard it was to get this spatial planning exercise off the ground? So how could, can you give council and community and developers some confidence that review in 2 years' time or whenever, what's the wording in the report, or when it was so required? How would that fit into your work program and get done?
Well, the team is working on the work program right now. So the growth planning team, which has now been boosted up to a team of 4 people, I think, or 5, I think, that's going to take and check out the resource planner. And led by Tim.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Sorry, I was just going to give some more. Sorry, you're probably not aware, Roger. Sorry for interrupting. You do. Sorry, I said it and then I shouldn't have.
Yeah. So we're looking forward to the implementation plan happening about 4 minutes. So that's happening now. So we are actually working on the premise that today something's going to get adopted and there's an implementation plan here. We need to start cracking on with it. So how much confidence can we give? As much.
Not an implementation, on a review when it's required.
Part of it. So if resolution is that we have to review it in 2 years, we need to start making sure we're planning forward for that. So, but it's like everything, 2 years from now, who knows who's sitting around the table, hopefully it gets picked up in the resolution and who's here to do that work.
In the implementation plan, we actually talk about that post the plan being adopted. So it talks about that we will be forming a group moving forward with stakeholders. So we would be actually continuing to work to hold us to account. So in the past, when we've adopted, for example, a structure plan got adopted, but then there was no continued work happening out in the community and with our partners. One thing we'd be really keen on to make sure in the implementation strategy is that we form these groups as well, so that we are actively working together and that will hopefully make, when we come to things like LTPs and we are making other decisions down the track, as yourselves as councillors, we have these voices and we've already been clear with everyone and everyone's on the same page, rather than we get to an LTP and then there's a big debate within the community over we don't support, investing in this infrastructure anymore. So we're hoping by doing those things, we'll continue to work with the community and our partners and we'll be on the same page when we get to putting forward recommendations.
Do you feel like with option B having that delay in review, 2 years' time or when it's required, sends a signal of it just sends the wrong message and limits housing solutions.
The intent was to when option B was written is we wrote
not option B, I mean in the recommendation.
Oh,
That's what you start, yeah.
What it is the spatial plan does allow for those things. Obviously, we can feel that confidence because we've been actively involved in developing the plan, how it works, and we've got it in our minds how it's all going to work. So when we looked at alternative options in the paper that were discussed, we did see that there was value to put forward to you, whether that you wanted to give the community more certainty by saying there was a set 2-year time when this will happen. This will be looked at in this way. We believe that even with the recommendation we have at the moment, those outcomes will still occur. But we do recognise that because there has been a lot of contention over Option F, and we have heard the community voice as well that has come through supporting that, and some of our hapu partners as well. So that's why we did put it in the paper if people felt you needed to give a little bit more clarity to people to have that confidence.
I've spent so much time on this over the last 3 weeks, and I actually found that Queenstown, Hamilton and Selwyn they adopted conditional growth areas in theirs. So
Queenstown's.
how do you put out this fire in me to include that contingent growth area? And respectfully, I acknowledge the work that you've all done, but I want to be fair and empowering for a Kirikiri and Waipapa who've been screaming out for us to take the handbrakes off for a long time.
So future urban zone, or a contingent zone. So I think, Cameron will speak this better than I can, but it really, what is it saying? The people that are there, how much weight has it got? It's been through a special consultation procedure. We've ended up here at the end of this, and now we're adopting something. So the question I've always got is how much weight does it mean to the hearings panel that sits down and looks at this? Says we're signalling an area over here, which, as I said at the start, doesn't align with what we came from, the district plan.
I've got some rebuttal to that. I'll save it for my debate.
So, that was early on. We came up with those objectives, those principles. We did an HBA, told us how much housing we needed based on population projections. So, all that played into this, and was the information that fed the end result that we came up with. We went out to consultation on 6 scenarios to try and cover that off, so you can see the analysis done around that. So, I guess my question is, after all of that, we still go and say, okay, we want to signal over here for another area that's for what reason? The real question is why, when you don't need it for growth. And so that's a flood zone.
45%.
45% flood zone.
That's my questions for now.
I've got some research and Councillor McNally.
And I'll be quick and Councillor McNally, keep me on that narrow. But just very quickly then, the 2 other concerns I have is every one of these, and correct me if I'm wrong, scenarios, it is going to, because our wastewater treatment in Kirikiri is at capacity, so very likely every one of those means a relate to the system's increased capacity, and in the near future, water, fresh water, great, so that's that question. So it's about risk and financial risks and affordability, and that's very flexible. We don't know how that's going to look. And I hope we'll be smart and save a lot of money there. But just going, the second one is both the hapu and organisations like our Kirikiri have asked to be involved. And we're talking, and I'm saying we want somebody to be flexible. Look, here's something to consider. If you actually have something that's right and a developer with land, or with a lenders, doesn't see any future scenario, chances are they will think, oh, I'm just going to go ahead anyway. And they'll start doing it and pushing by other means. And in terms of risk to infrastructure costs, any development that's happening that we haven't paid for is significantly more expensive. History has shown. So that's why I'm keen to actually see scenarios mentioned. So even if they do see it, maybe whatever you want to call it, you can call it continued growth areas or conditional growth areas, whatever you want to call it. If that was actually there, and we had the attitude that we want to see this succeed and grow, And so any developer coming along can sit down with us and say, this is where we're planning to go. So what option gives us something like that? So that it is a can-do attitude, that we will sit down with you, come and talk to us. It may not be in the next 5 years, but it could be 10 years out. And at that point, your costs and your returns may be higher because we're going to sit down with you and plan it through according to our plan here. That's what I want to see. And at the moment, I'm seeing maybe option B, or what Steve and the Mayor's put up is maybe something flexible. If we can commit to an ongoing consultation with the community in that process.
Yeah, agreed, absolutely. It's, we need to be better at this. We need to be better at working with developers.
So there was a question, is there option A or B better suited to give us that flexibility?
I think either option will give that flexibility, because if, for example, through these review cycles, or if significant infrastructure was going to be built by NRC, for example, for flood mitigation, if you were going to obviously activate an entirely new area that you had previously looked at, or you were going to reduce some areas because you wanted to kind of more go Waikato-centric to perhaps make infrastructure more affordable, if that's where, it was felt it was a better financial outcome, then you would have to go through a community process again so that they can understand why you're changing things and whether they agree with it as well. So.
Okay, but I'd like to see us formally agree going forward, not for our current consultation, not a panel, but actually partnershiping with the community.
Yes, we've got that in the implementation plan.
So that short circuit some of that.
Yes.
Okay, next one.
Okay, Councillor McNally, then Deputy Sheffield.
Personally, Roger, lobbying. I've been lobbied harder by staff over the last couple of years than by the community, just for the record. I attended one of our earlier meetings. I'll make my own decisions, and I'll make that decision once I understand things and I'm not being led by the nose. Part of the reason for putting up this resolution was to have the debate today. Counter argument to Felicity Foy's, Councillor Foy's cost argument. Hybrid D&E instantly puts pressure on the council or ratepayer to increase the capacity of water and sewer in Kerikeri. It is instant. The moment that plan's approved, we push the button, we put on upgrade and fast. Option that I put up, it actually, if you read D&E carefully, it was instruct staff to include a section in the adopted spatial plan, explain the status of the proposal F as a conditional developer-led future growth area. D notes the inclusion of F in this way does not change the adopted growth scenario or the infrastructure planning basis of the spatial plan at this time. Any form of incorporation review will be subject to further consultation and or plan review if required. If you go to, if you did statistics at university, 39 for and 42 against, that's within the margin of error. It's a draw at best. If we're electing the government after first past the post, 42% wins. So against wins. We're looking at a long-term 30-year spatial plan. You talk about resilient, what are we here? Existing infrastructure that's resilient, transport links, carbon footprint. So D&E are heavily pedestrian cycle focused and has its transportation. The Kerikeri already under a little bit of transport pressure. It's going to be magnified dramatically by intensification in town there, unless everybody walks, which I can't see happening. But you never know. There's another point I had. Under your, if we looked at option B, the reason I brought Kofi, Deputy Mayor and I brought this to the table, is you talk about risks and constraints. You actually say that it's Te Pākura is a living document subject to ongoing monitoring and schedule review. Scheduled to go when the district plan becomes operative, and then no later than 2 years after the spatial plan is adopted. That review schedule, we also refer to it under advantages, transparent process for future reviews of the spatial plan. But you give no timelines. You do state in another part here somewhere that we have to update something to do with the review of the plan. The flood risk, there's a heap of land flood prone right across the far north. The NRC has updated some LiDAR work there. I don't think they've done enough in relation to the increased hard surfaces around the Waipapa industrial area. There's a massive increase in hard surfaces there. I haven't seen the document yet. You, in your comments under risk constraints and cost consideration, you talk about excessive development costs that aren't assessed as achieving housing choice and fillability. So that's talking about central government push, which the landowner has no commitment to fund. We're working on development and financial contributions being reintroduced. So I just think a comment like that has to go. You talk about disconnected growth. You mentioned a couple of bridges, flood defences, inconsistent with central, regional and local policy, particularly regarding urban sprawl and development in hazard-prone areas. While I can agree with all that, it's just like, well, what are the solutions? You know, and our scenario is very clear. This is developer-led. Let's have a go. Front up. As a council, we acknowledge the potential benefits of all of the proposals. The intent to deliver housing, infrastructure and resilience comes through a developer-led approach. The developer comments is going to rule this. Commercial initiative staging, once again, that's comments, that's business. If there's no market for what you've produced, you're going to sit on it unless the bank tells you to sell it, and that's called a mortgage sale. There was something else that I had, but I think to option B covers what we've done there, but it needs the same amount of rewording as you said is needed in this proposal. I thought that was pretty good. So, and I have to acknowledge the work that our Deputy Mayor did on that. I'm not convinced. So the other option I'm supporting at the moment is D, do not adopt it. Go backwards.
Roger and Timmy, I've got Councillor Boy and Deputy Restricted on my list, but why didn't you as staff put your options? Oh, these letters, honestly, must be haunted by the alphabet.
Oh, one other thing, just before I finish, sorry, is one other thing. The Kerikeri Golf Club, those two that spoke today, I've received an email overnight that you don't actually speak on behalf of the golf club. So I just need to just be clear that that's in the public forum. And that was an email which has been signed off by the board chair, the president, the men's club captain, the women's club captain, three committee members. Happy to talk to you about it after.
Thank you.
That B does say subject to agreement by the golf club.
My question just quickly is, why did you as staff put up your option A as per our written agenda over option B? Is it because of like capacity to review within 2 years? I just wonder why staff, given the number of submissions and obviously the community support for option F, that you didn't put that up as your preferred option from the get-go, but you did allow it.
So from our point of view, and not me, but more so the planning staff, we've applied planning principles, best practice when looking at this. So we're fortunate enough to be able to sit in the back room and take that approach and look at it. And is it meeting growth projections? Is it free from constraints where we want to push development to? And what are the costs of the infrastructure? So we had that opportunity to do all of that work. So, it wasn't an easy decision because staff came back to me and said, we want to continue down the path of promoting option A, or what we proposed here to go forward with the draft spatial plan. But we're being realistic because there is community sentiment out there for scenario F. So even though I gave a very passionate speech at the start, I'm pragmatic that we need to come to a place on something because there is a high level of interest in the community for scenario F. And so we believe that in option B, we feel that we're we're leaving the door open for that, for the consideration. Option B in this paper that is, that we leave that door open for the reconsideration of and re-looking at scenario F again as part of a review period, part of a review process. Our main concern was that if we go down this path, what signals are we sending to the community and what signals are we sending to the district plan process? If we start saying, we've done all this planning work, we've said that this is where the future zoning needs to go. It's based on infrastructure, it's based on roads, it's based on intensification, all those things we talked about. And yet here we go, we're pushing over here. So I'm not sure how that will land with the district plan hearing panel if we go forward with that, but we are realistic that there is a legal opportunity to use the scenario. Does that?
We'll go with Ms. Shepherd.
Thank you, Councillor Hawke reminded me that you didn't answer the question before. How did those other councils address the risk?
Queenstown and the other councils that went down this.
Yeah, they went through the same thing we did. And then they.
I don't know if Ed's looked at it, don't know if Jay's looked at it. Don't know. I do know that the Queenstown got very litigious with what went down there, and it ended up being, I think, the Environment Court from memory. So.
Okay.
Queenstown's also a tier 2 council.
On page 94 of the agenda, is point 23. The draft spatial plan identified the riverside destination node property. That's on the whole entire journey through the spatial plan.
So page 94, sorry, which second?
Number 23. I'm on the memo describing amendments to Te Pātukere item. Title of it, it's Dave's memo with all the amendments. Can you just refresh my memory? Was that destination note on the base property picked up in this last round of consultation?
It was picked up in this last round of consultation. It was delivered as a result of the earlier round of consultation where it was suggested that a nice river precinct in that location. So we
consulted on that.
It was included in the consultation for the draft spatial plan, node, and brought in.
Okay, I'm ready to debate.
I do have Councillor Forley first.
On page 154, talked about the staging of infrastructure. I can see all the coloured lines relating to transport and free waters, and there's a big gap in the middle, which is the subject site for scenario E. So my concern or my question around the staging of infrastructure, we include scenario F. In terms of the modelling and in terms of the forecasting that we've done, and the fact that the site owner for scenario F hasn't offered any infrastructure, how are we supposed to forward plan anticipated costs, anticipated infrastructure staging to allow for that?
It's very challenging because we don't have that commitment. And
I think it goes back to the earlier question of why staff put forward, option A, or option 1 if we want to call it, is because of the complexities of if right now we brought F into the framework, as has been raised earlier by Ms. Billington, is a lot of the work that we've done has looked at the spatial plan as it is currently now in terms of as we've moved through the phases and we've looked at preferred outcomes. The challenge we have is if we adopted something right now that brought F into it right now is the conflicts or the lack of direction in the document that we would have. So one of the benefits of doing it later on as part of a 2-year review cycle, for example, is it would give you the ability to
do this work and also rewrite the plan to be very clear as to how this is all going to work. And we would have that additional information as well about financial implications.
All right. Councillor Halkett, how do we do then, Councillor Court?
Sure, yeah, any sort of thing was into all this, but, so kind of what I heard is that the role of the plan is to signal intent, to plan for increased growth in our area, that we need flexibility and change, and developer contributions need to come into the play. I suppose when I look at these options, I just sort of like to summarise it that option A was adopt the plan with amendments. B was to adopt option A, which directs additional monitoring and review. C, don't adopt, so that would be easy to just cross out C. D, don't adopt, revise the draft plan to include if. And in this model, I think what I'm kind of hearing, because I kind of feel that you're straitjacketed by planning things. But what I'm hearing from all of the submissions and the closeness between those who agree and disagree, is the hybrid model, which includes, 3 scenarios rather than one.
Yeah.
And so, what is the problem? I don't want to get into too deep about that one, but what is the problem including all the hybrids? And then I also see another thing, because I think of this for not only Waikato, Kirikiri, but also Ngāti Kahu in Far North, Hokianga, Ngāpuhi, Nui Tonu. The other little things that we haven't put in here is the potential for settlements. And that could, in the future, it's not here now, but in the future that needs to be considered. So I suppose I'm asking, is it really difficult to include all the hybrids? Because even though we might want one option, the one way doesn't work, but some parts of everything fits or suits to be more generally acceptable. So 3 hybrids rather than 2 hybrids, or, including F.
I think it's been that challenge and debate in the room today over if you have a plan that signals multiple options, it's a signal that council also will support those options occurring. And it's that challenge between...
So short answer, we can't afford, and also it will give more growth area than we need to fill.
That's correct, in a nutshell.
So
That's right.
the process that we went through this was to try and ensure that we're staying within that envelope of the number of houses. Yeah. And again, the infrastructure costs.
It binds us to having to, in some way, shape or form, provide the infrastructure required for growth that exceeds your growth scenarios.
That's right. We are signalling we work with developers to achieve these outcomes.
But we can't afford it now. We're talking about how hard it's going to be in 2 or 3 years, but people can't afford it now.
So
I just heard somebody say, they cleared their land but can't afford to put something on it.
We will make it more affordable. We will make it more affordable if we start.
It's unaffordable now.
Tika. Councillor Councillor Court.
Just help fill in the gaps in the district plan process in my mind. An application has been made by KFO for a district plan, through the district plan process for a rezone. One of our biggest concerns is around the flood risk. Addressing that flood risk actually relies on property outside the area that's the subject of the plan change. It actually talks about land to the west being used as a detention dam or whatever. I'm qualified to know, which is about that, but it relies on that. And equally, there will be a downstream impact if either of those upstream scenarios don't play out. So then we have a letter in the agenda, and I've got a text message and a phone call and a text message and an email from the golf club saying we don't agree to any roads going through our land. So what confidence can I get, because I'm struggling with the decision, is the district plan will pick up the issues outside of the site and address them in such a way that there's no risk to the ratepayer. And just to put that in some context, years ago I was on the Waipapa Flood Liaison Committee, and we worked with NRC, and we simply could not come up with a scenario to address flooding. It didn't reduce the flood risk downstream of Waipapa. So every model they put on the table said, you're putting properties at Peacock Gardens and Stone Store and everywhere between at risk. So to my mind, the only solution, bearing in mind I'm not a stormwater engineer, anything, is upstream detection. So can we walk into option F, a whole bunch of models that was somebody else, or will that all be picked up at the district plan process?
District plan process doesn't get down to that level of detail in terms of it's looking at what zoning is appropriate for a piece of land, for example. It's not like a resource consent process where you would actually know what the development is going to be on that site and what its effects are going to be. All they can look at is the premise of whether the land is suitable for urban development, scale of urban development will be determined down the track. For example, with the submission from Fresh, they haven't got a detailed engineering assessment to manage the flood risk. It's conceptual because they're only looking at it from this is an urban framework. We'd like to move from rural to urban, but they cannot give the detail of where the houses are going to be, the number of houses exactly, and all that. So no, we do not know what the actual true effects will be at the stage of doing a plan change.
I think also your question is what can we, does it impact anything outside of what the area they're asking for rezoning? We're talking about upstream, for a detention dam, whether that might be Waipapa or the K, I can't remember the number for the K4 dam proposal. I guess if that went ahead, then obviously the land would become more viable.
Sorry, I guess what I'm trying to understand here. If the district plan process or this process led to option F being rezoned, the developer is not responsible for the effects outside of their land. Is that correct?
At that time they are not, but at the time a person came in to do the physical development under the Building Act, and you'd have to get like a subdivision consent under the then you would be looking at those level of effects. But the reality is once a land is zoned for something, it's very difficult to then decline a development.
So could the ratepayer become ultimately liable for building Lake Waipapa? Or the regional council, it doesn't really matter if it's a regional, it's still the same ratepayer. So will the ratepayer be compelled to do something? And we have all these resilience strategies going on. We have horrible learnings from what happened in Esk Valley. So what is the risk that there will be a compulsion upon the ratepayer to fund some form of mitigation?
And my thinking, the risk is that we allow zoning to happen there. We acknowledge that there is a risk. Then an event happens and then everyone's running around to find out who's liable for it. And it's probably going to come into council being liable for it because we allowed it to happen. So, to mitigate that risk would be to build a dam. But who's going to pay for that?
Thank you.
Thank you. At this point, I am going to go to a break before we actually move and get into debate, and that's because I need to go to the toilet. So we'll have a 10-minute break, and I'll see if it gets to those that are online, can we please, Gigi's just share it?
So include scenario F in the spatial plan as a contingent future growth area to reflect the submission and acknowledge its potential, subject to the following conditions. The condition that I've added in is that any future inclusion is done with support of the golf club. And I just want to start by saying the previous council moved a resolution that private property wouldn't be taken under the Public Works Act unless we had agreement from landowners. So I just want to make sure that we stand by that resolution going forward. And I haven't spoken to KFO about this resolution, so apologies if I'm locking you into some things that you weren't comfortable with, but after having gone through all the workshopping information over the last 3 years, and it's been a really big learning process for me going through this spatial plan process, hearing from the infrastructure people in a workshop upstairs with our hapu rōpū, hearing from our stakeholders from time to time as well through Vision Kirikiri and our Kirikiri. And just on our Kirikiri, one of the reasons we are here today looking to adopt a spatial plan for Waipapa Kirikiri, we didn't have one, but also they were furious that, things couldn't happen in Kirikiri Waipapa, or things were happening because there was no spatial plan. And so we're here today because they were pushing for that to happen. I do have some further notes. So I want to push back on the financial risk comment that was made earlier by staff, because I think it would be remiss of us as a governing body to overlook the opportunity risk. Or, we're creating a missed opportunity. We heard through the submission, we heard through the consultation process, which I felt was robust and was assured through an email when I was questioning, okay, people want us to stop this process because, we haven't got all the information in here on scenario F if councillors should decide to bring it back in. And no, we were told, oh no, you can add it in after, if the consultation should so indicate that you should, and then we're told through legal process that we can't. So that really is not good advice that I received. But anyway, the developer has indicated the funding required for that infrastructure, Three Waters road connections and flood protection, there would be private input, private funds. It's not being added into our infrastructure funding assumptions or growth forecasts in the spatial plan today. We're flagging it as a future potential node subject to approval and proven viability. It might not happen. The spatial plan already includes a monitoring and review mechanism. And so that mechanism, which I don't have much faith in, but the review process could reassess and remove my addition of scenario F as a contingent growth node. Then I think it would be just a handbrake, as I used before, if we didn't put it in now. We have had comments today about the objectives. So bear with me while I just go over those. One of the objectives is affordable, diverse housing supply. Scenario F, and I didn't want to be all about scenario F today, but it does have the potential to lower land costs and scale and enable more affordable housing and housing typologies. The developer is committed to diverse and affordable housing outcomes. Resilient infrastructure and climate responsiveness. the developer-funded flood mitigation scheme creates resilience not just for the site, but downstream. We heard that not only from KFO, we heard it from an engineer and NRC representation, promotes compact development on engineered flood protected land, and no cost to ratepayers. Yes, later on, but where would private partnership funded development come from if we don't give it space to happen? One of the other objectives is integrated and connected communities. Scenario F, subject to private property permissions, delivers proposed roading and active transport links, improving connectivity between Waipapa and Kirikiri. It improves that connectivity between State Highway 10, future-proofing the transport corridor and potential to relieve the network pressure on southern Kirikiri. Partnership with Mana Whenua. KFO has engaged with Hapu, or some of the Hapu so far, and expressed willingness to co-design. Opportunity for culture and environmental co-design of green spaces, awa corridors and place names as well. That's just awesome. Efficient and sustainable land use. So that's conditionally, the developer proposes consolidated master planning rather than piecemeal sprawl, and includes commitments to sustainability. And next one, the issue of, I'll save the rest for the end because I just lost my train of thought and I feel like nobody's listening. How long did I speak for so I can save the rest of it for the closing?
No, you get 5 minutes at the end. Councillor McNally.
Prove that you were listening. These are all your notes.
Oh, thank you, Ed. Oh, there it is. That's what I was going to say.
I don't get a second turn at this.
No.
I think I've had my say before relating to some of the things. I just think that
Was noted.
it was noted. Mr. Usage might like to note that as well. There's a couple of things that in the document just need reference to. Whatever happens in the spatial plan and this supporting, or what we're suggesting here, it has to actually also be included in other statutory planning documents and meet higher level documents coming down from national and regional, the national government and regional planning, and also in alignment with the councils or the ratepayer infrastructure strategies. So that's why the noting that as an option, subject to the developer meeting most of the requirements to make sure it's still financially viable. It's a go, the business case stacks up. And effectively we're still supporting the scenarios D and E that's set out in the draft plan. We just want to note that so we don't have to go back to a long with the process in the future to include this greenfield if it is viable for the developer.
Thank you. Can I just, I don't know, but I normally have a better nous for kind of getting a feel from you or how you'd probably vote. I don't actually know, so I don't know where this this alternate resolution is sitting. And what I'm concerned about, I'll share my concerns about how I'm going to vote. If this wasn't moved, I would have likely moved option B. Right. If this fails, I will be looking to move option B. My concern is that, and it shouldn't be, but my concern is that it has felt, and I know it's not true, the community lobbies us and staff advise us, but it has felt a little bit like staff lobbying. And my concern is that if we were to vote for something that our staff have been against ever since our first principles, which established what we believed in for Te Pātukuri and all of that they're going to make it very difficult to actually achieve any of this resolution as we try and move forward. And I know it shouldn't be like that, but for me, I'm not as, I used to always describe myself as being naively optimistic and gone a little bit the other way 6 years into this role, is that what I don't want to say, we do go through this, but then we heard from staff that this is, oxymoronic to the plan itself and those first principles. So how will this recommendation be captured and actually move forward? What message will this resolution say to the spatial plan finalisation and what we tell our district plan commissioners and where district plan ends up? I don't actually know. What I will say though is that I expect whatever the resolution is from this council today, is that whether we have listened to your advice or not, or whether you are for or against it for people in these chambers, for our community members, that you just have to live with it, no matter which way it lands, whether it's in your camp or whether not. And I still don't know. Well, I'm probably going to abstain at this point. I haven't had anyone else indicate speaking preference. We'll go to, I saw an order of what I saw, we'll go Councillor Court, Councillor Foy, Councillor.
I'll give you an indication, Your Worship. I won't be supporting the amended resolution, although I think it has a lot of merit. I am concerned about what I don't know at this point, and that is what is causing me to sit on the fence, firmly getting splinters in my behind. I heard the community and I live in that community, and ultimately I will probably pay the price for this at the ballot box, but so be it. Until we are clear on the flood risk, until we are clear on the infrastructure costs, there is enormous question marks hanging over my mind in regard to including option F, even as a hybrid growth scenario, because I think it sends the messages to the district plan team that we think it has merit, and it may. My preference would be option B, and that scenario F proceed through the district plan process, that a comprehensive risk assessment is done and a business case is put forward that addresses the flood risk and the roading. Without the golf course, the roads don't work. It won't fix the roading challenge. If we can't get that road through, it's just going to send everyone down Waipapa Road along State Highway 10. It's not going to achieve the objectives of walkability, connectivity and cycling. We do need to include the infrastructure funding assumptions into Local Waters Done Well, and we've done that with a current model that Mr. Hensley has been working on, and that includes the modelling for scenario D and E, which we have to do. I'm concerned about affordability. The ratepayers can't afford three options on the table. They simply can't pick up the operating, maintenance and depreciation costs of three systems, even if the developer puts it in at their cost. It's ultimately an asset that would transfer to council systems, and the ratepayers would have to pick that up. So I think there's a lot of merit in exploring option F further, and I believe the 2-year time frame will give us plenty enough time to do that, and at that time it can come back on the table if we can tick all those boxes. At the moment, I'm just not there yet.
Thank you. I'll go to Councillor Foy.
The current resolution, which is what we're debating at the moment. First of all, I'm not familiar with the Samhain or Queenstown hybrid model where they have future urban zones that are allowed for within their plan change. I'm not familiar with how that was done under their spatial plan. So I'm not sure how we could agree to a scenario with conditions when the applicant who's put in their own submission hasn't proposed them themselves. So the concern I have is that the current submission hasn't offered those things. We're saying we could agree to something as long as those conditions are met, but so we've included it before they've actually offered it. So my concern is that the ratepayer is going to pick up the tab for those conditions, which would be very expensive. And with the current scenario being over 200 million, how much extra is it going to be to allow for scenario F infrastructure as well? This is going to be the biggest project we've ever done in the whole district. And the rhetoric that I've heard from the community is actually the first thing we should have done is collaborate with the Northern Regional Council to do flood mitigation like we did in Kaitaia, for example, for the whole catchment, because then it's future-proof and mitigated the hazard before we plan. And that Waipapa in particular is particularly at risk. So I would love today to have NRC in the room. I feel like we are not collaborating with them at all, and we're not forward planning in terms of our long-term plan for their plan and our plan so that we can plan on a catchment basis. So just highlighting that to staff because this is going to be brought up again, and we really should be meeting with the NRC about this at a governance level, not just an operations level. And I've also highlighted that in previous meetings. So based on the current recommendation, I'm concerned that the next stage through the district plan where we have our hearings commissioners, aka some of our councillors here at the table, making decisions on a submission, and that submission is on the basis of this weighting of this spatial plan. So I would hate for our ratepayers across the district to commit to paying for their infrastructure. I'm happy for them to offer that, but I haven't heard that they are offering that in any submission whatsoever. So I feel like it's a significant financial risk to, in particular, for natural hazards in Three Waters, until we have that level of detail. So at the moment, I am supportive of option B, but the current motion on the table, I think I haven't got enough information to support that at this time from the submission from the subject site for scenario F or from the start. I feel like I wish that I had further information before we had this meeting today, but that hasn't come to us, and that's frustrating that we had this whole resolution that's based on information we don't know. So I won't be supporting the current motion. In an alternative motion, I'll be supportive of option B.
Thank you. I'll go to Councillor Vucic.
Thanks, I actually like it. The comments I made before, and several things that I raised there are included in here, not spelled out in B. So no, I didn't mention B. If I read it correctly, and I think others probably may or may not agree, there's a particularly like point 2, 3 up there. If you look at it, you'll see that point 2 says that the proposal is progress through appropriate, that one. The comprehensive flood mitigation infrastructure is designed and funded by the developer. I think that's probably a bit tough, so it probably won't happen. But you need, so in other words, the flood mitigation has to be there before this is done. There's no commitment. And therefore no risk to us. And then it says 3, which if you bring that back up, please, to 3. Oh, 3, go up. Yes, where it says the necessary infrastructure is provided. So now we're talking about, the sewage systems and the water system that's included. So I think there is no risk to talk about the scenario F to ratepayers, but there is a risk on those two things to ratepayers on scenarios D&E, because that's not specified up there. And what I would like to see is no permitted building of houses in a flood zone. Why isn't that there? I know you can do that in Kerikeri, and that's an option you can do. There's no actual risk there. But if we go put it in the floodplain, then we are at risk. Because we've said we haven't permitted them to build there when we actually haven't got flood mitigation in it. So I just want to make a note there. And I, in fact, wouldn't mind if that was pulled up, so that applies to all the scenarios. There's flood mitigation put in place, paid by NRC or paid by whoever. That's one change, then I think it'd be better. And of course, with DCs or whatever contributions, the impact on ratepayers won't be that high either. Hopefully, not any solutions, but never mind. But so I actually do support it. Guys.
All right, I haven't had any further indications, so I will go to Deputy Mayor Stratford for right of reply.
This scenario F, we had an opportunity in a Q&A session last week with staff, presented it in that, so that is also why they have sort of acknowledged that in B. And I did actually send it to you as well, Councillor Foy, because of your planner's brain. I thought you might pounce on it. I haven't received anything back from you. 42% did not support the draft plan. Of those 42%, of those that didn't support, they wanted either scenario F or scenario F added to what we're locking in. One of the comments made today is that ratepayers can't afford. That is why that's the primary reason we dropped scenario F out. And after that was dropped out, we received information that we weren't told that developers would be paying for scenario F. So that wasn't included in the consultation document. So we didn't get to consult on it. I do want to reiterate that a 2-year wait with no guarantee of reconsultation or uptake means this area would be sidelined, and I don't think this council should risk that, having gone through what we did with the is it Kirikiri or what, of the structural plan? You know, we have had handbrakes on these communities for such a long time. And yes, staff highlighted flood mitigation isn't there, but there is flood mitigation proposed, so I don't think it's a reason to exclude the area. The cautious approach that I'm taking by including, what's the wording that I use? Including in the spatial plan as a contingent future growth subject to conditions isn't locking us in. It is not deferring it either. It is putting it there as an opportunity, much like what Queenstown, Hamilton and Selwyn did with their future investigation area, deferred growth cell and contingent node. That those are clear precedents, and we're not taking a risk. We're matching national good process. If we wait, we risk delaying housing supply and resilience gains in a time of national and local crisis. I look forward to the vote. I think that it honours the previous councillors that were part of this, Councillor Clendon and Councillor Smith, by adopting something today which is for, you know, everybody, and honours the process that the public have been through with the engagement and submission process. And I do not mean it as a disrespect to our awesome staff and with the enormous amount of hours that they've put into it. But, and I don't make decisions based on whether I'm going to get elected or not. I base them on all the information and, you know, I am a high risk person. I'm not risk averse. And this is a risk, but I think it's a risk worth taking for this council. Thank you.
Thank you for that. We'll go to the vote. All those,
We vote by division. We did Councillor McNally second.
I have Deputy Mayor Stratford moving, Councillor McNally seconding, and I'll get the vote by division boxy thing up, please, ladies. Deputy Mayor Stratford. Councillor Court. Councillor Foy.
Opposed.
Councillor Haukiat Harawira.
Aye.
Councillor Kapa.
Ahore.
Councillor Pliskowicz is absent. Councillor McNally. Aye. Councillor Radich.
Aye. Aye.
Councillor Akina.
Against.
Was that against Councillor Rakana?
Councillor Vucic. That leaves myself.
Groundhog Day for you.
Oh, why do I should just make a decision at the start next time.
You said you were going to stay.
If I go against, that's 4. Do you know what? I'm 4. And with that, we have enough votes. We have adopted our spatial plan, but included a contingent future growth area. And I look forward to seeing this going to our district plan commissions and seeing our district. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, staff. With that, I am going to ask all of you beautiful visitors to leave us because I'm going to move to exclude the following 2 items. The delivery of transport services and the general profit get a secondary. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed or abstentions. It's carried, and we will pause our live stream and In our order, show some respect, thank you. In our public excluded section, we had two items, 6.1 delivery of transport services and 6.2 general employment matters. Those are both stay in PX until such time as the chief executive deems that they can be shared for the transportation services. I will close our meeting with.
Before we close, we've got a message from staff that there's a tweak needed for the decision made on Pātakuria, and if you could please just call an adjournment just to confirm.
Okay. Adjourn the meeting. A motion that we reconsider the wording of our Te Pātakuria paper. Given we just had the wrong wording in there, we need 75% for this. So.
Yes.
Okay, all those in favour say aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Those opposed or abstaining, ka pai. And then I'll now move the change that, what do you call that?
Updated.
The updated resolution, which has changed the wording as set out in the draft plan consulted on to as set out in the spatial plan attached to the council meeting agenda report.
Yep.
The reason being the draft plan consulted on didn't include the recommended amendments that were required for the spatial plan itself, and this fixes that up. So I've moved and it's been seconded by Councillor Research. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed or abstentions? Councillor Foy opposed. That's been clearly council meeting. And then I will move it as substantive motion. Seconded by Deputy Director. Those in favour say aye. Those opposed or abstentions? Councillor Foy opposed. That has been carried. I'll put the meeting because the one will look at it, checking about Thank you, Adrian. And we